Hey folks, welcome to Fly Go. So we're here at Sam and Mary's 172, and we're going to do another prop balance, this time using the Classic. Do I get that in the frame? Yeah, so there's the Classic, DynaVibe Classic, which is a little different from the GX3 that we used on mine. So we want to just show the differences, show how to actually do the balance on the Classic. We're not going to repeat all of the stuff that we did in the other video because we have a lot of details there on how to mount things, where to mount things, and things like that. Don't need to do that. But one thing that we do have here that I didn't have last time, which is super handy, is the weight kit. I asked them to send a weight kit this time around so we could see it. And it has all of the nuts and bolts already in there with the weights printed on the little sticker. So instead of us spending a bunch of time figuring out the weights of everything and all that kind of stuff, you just grab it and add things up. But yeah, we'll get started.
Hey everybody, Gil, thanks for having me back. Out here balancing props again with the DynaVibe equipment. The last time we met, we were balancing the prop on your RV with our GX3, and I've always wanted to make a video with using our other balancer, which is called the DynaVibe Classic. The Classic is less expensive than the GX3, but it also doesn't have all the features that the GX3 has, but it will still balance any prop, and it's very easy to use, provided you kind of wrap your head around the concept of how it all works. So just like the GX3 we had last time, we're using an accelerometer and a photo tack up on the engine, and these are the exact same sensors that the GX3 uses. So the accelerometer is going to measure how severe the vibration is due to the prop being out of balance. And what the photo tack does is it hits a piece of reflective tape on the prop blade, and that gives us our phase reference. It gives us the prop RPM, but it will also tell us where the prop is out of balance. So when it tells us where the prop is out of balance on the meter itself, what it's telling us is this is where the prop is heavy, and you need to add weight 180 degrees from the opposite side. You could also remove weight at that location, but the likelihood you're going to have counterweight at that location is very unlikely. So more often than not, you're going to have to be adding weight on the prop 180 degrees out from the angle that the Classic is reporting. So one thing I'd like to show you guys real quick, I don't know if you can get it on the camera, but a lot of people ask this, they have difficulty mounting the photo tack and getting it hitting the reflective tape. This is an LED light, so it's low intensity when it hits the reflective tape. We're in the hangar right now, but the door's open, so it's be very hard to see the light actually on the tape, and if you took it completely outside, it'd be impossible to see it. So what we did, we got a little red light, a little gate light on the back of this, and it blinks when it's making contact with the reflective tape. The quicker it's blinking or pulsing means the better the signal we have. So if we move the tape, it goes away, move the tape in front of it, it comes back. Another thing that really is important to kind of wrap your head around when you're using this unit, and this is very common that I get questions from people, you need to be very comfortable with knowing that everything we do in relationship to which way is the prop turning, where are the sensors mounted, where am I going to add weight, is from the perspective of you standing in front of the airplane looking back at it, not sitting in the airplane looking back out at the prop. If you had that wrong, everything's going to be backwards, okay? So everything we do is from this perspective looking backwards. With that in mind, the way we have our sensors mounted right now, and everything's turned off, keys are out.
Correct,
so
yes.
We're safe to do this. Right now, we have our photo tack at 0 degrees. If you think of everything in terms of 0, 180, the photo tack's at 0 degrees, and the accelerometer is also at 0 degrees. Now, the accelerometer is slightly offset from the sensor line, from the center line of the engine. But what you have to kind of wrap your head around with the accelerometer, and this may be a bad analogy, but the accelerometer is reacting in this direction, out the top of it. And there's actually a little arrow on the side of it that will show the arrow pointing this way. So think of it as, bad analogy, water when it's measuring vibrations flowing out this end. So it's reacting in this direction, okay? If we were to physically take this accelerometer, Keep it oriented straight up and down, but move it over here. If we had a place to move it over here, it would still be considered at 0 degrees because it's still reacting in this direction, okay? If we were to take the accelerometer and lay it down on its side to where now it's pointing out that way, then we would be at 90 degrees, okay? So it's better to have it right on the center line because that's where it's gonna be more sensitive. But if you had to, move it off to the side, which is very common, particularly when you're using case bolt adapters, it's gonna be off the center line. It's gonna be very, very slightly less sensitive. You probably wouldn't even notice it, but it's still gonna work okay. So very important that everything's from standing in front of the airplane, looking back, and the accelerometer, what's very important is not only where it's physically mounted, but how it's oriented. We don't know what the reading on the airplane is gonna be yet because we haven't run it, but let's just say hypothetically that we had a reading at 2,400 RPMs, a 0.5 IPS at 90 degrees, okay? So what that's saying is at 2,400 RPMs, your heavy spot is at 90 degrees, okay? So once we shut the airplane down, we wanna make sure everything's turned off, keys are out, all that good stuff, and then we wanna index the prop to where the reflective tape is back in front of the photo tack. Then, this is also very important. The accelerometer is your 0 degree point. It doesn't matter where the photo tack is, the accelerometer is your 0 degree point. The manual says count in the direction the prop is turning. And the reason why we did that was because if you follow those instructions, it wouldn't matter if you're sitting in the airplane or looking back at it. As long as you count in the rate it's turning, you're going to be successful at finding the heavy spot. But this prop, from our perspective, is turning counterclockwise. All right, so we are going to count in the direction the prop's turning. So our accelerometer is your 0 degree point, and if we had a reading of 90 degrees, counterclockwise, over here is going to be our heavy spot. What we're going to have to do is add counterweight to the opposite side of this. So the GX3 we used before will tell you how much weight to add in grams and where to add it. The Classic will not tell you how much weight to add, but it will tell you where to add it, okay? If you got a reading in 90 degrees, that's telling you this is where the prop is heavy. There's no weight to take off here, so the only thing we can do is add weight to the opposite side, okay? And because it does not tell you how much weight to add, a lot of people are kind of just throw weight at it and see if they can get a result or get a reaction out of it. There's a pretty down and dirty easy formula you can use that will give you how much weight to add. And basically and it would work for any airplane. If you take the engine horsepower and then divide that by 10 and then add 30. It's the engine horsepower divided by 10, add 30. Whatever that value comes out to, you would multiply that by your IPS reading on the DynaVibe. And that would be, this is how much weight in grams is required. I like to say the best way you could do this is to take baby steps, okay, toward balancing the prop. This is something else I wanted to show you. I highly suggest you use this when you're using the Classic. And this is our prop balancing worksheet. As you can see here, it's going to allow us to mark down the data from all our runs and exactly what we did to the prop. Keeping a record of what you did is vitally important when you do this. This really helps you visualize what you're doing. Think of this as the prop blade. If we had a 0.5 IPS reading at 90 degrees, and we can see this outside circle, and you see these graduated numbers right here, these are the IPS, these are the angles. So we could go mark down at 0.5 at 90 degrees, we could make a mark there. You want to make copies of this, okay? At 0.5 at 90 degrees, this is where our heavy spot is. We're going to add weight to the opposite side. So the next time we run the airplane, and let's say our reading comes out down here at 0.3, and now we're at 120 degrees, we could literally draw a line from 90 to 120, and it helps you visualize what we want to do is be in the bullseye right here, or are we going in the right direction to get to that bullseye? Okay, so very helpful. Make copies of it. You can go to our website and you can get copies of it there. But documenting everything you do is really, really important. because if you run it, this is a pretty easy process, but if you run into issues, you can always go back to know what you did. And you don't want to just be throwing weight on there. And when then you call and go, hey, I'm trying to balance the prop. Well, how much weight did you put on there? I don't know. 2 washers, 3 washers, I can't remember how much weight.
Yep.
So we need to know how much. And sometimes people will say, well, it's this washer right here. It's probably weighs, I don't know, maybe 3 grams. Well, you need to know exactly
you need to
how
weigh
much
it
it
or
weighs.
have the kit.
Particularly,
where you know.
particularly when you get the IPS levels down really low on the prop, everything gets really sensitive. So you're really going to be starting to add stuff like this, and that's where it's critical to know how much you put on there. Plus, at the end of the day, you want to have a record of what you did where you can put the aircraft information and all that good stuff. Where do we want to balance the prop down to? Well, this graduated scale right here will show us. And the green area is acceptable, yellow area is caution, and the red area is unacceptable. So we typically want to balance to 0.07 IPS or lower. And if on the high end, if we're at 1.25 IPS, don't even attempt to balance the prop because you've exceeded the limitation. And what would happen in that case is, could you balance the prop? It's possible you could balance the prop, but you're going to have an inordinate amount of weight on the prop, which you don't want to have on the prop, okay? So in some cases, if it exceeds this,
There's other issues going on.
there's other issues, and it may just be, hey, you got to call the prop shop up, and can you guys statically balance this again? And the static balance will get us down to a level where we can manage the dynamic balance. And what we're going to do is you're going to crank the airplane up.
Okay.
You're going to wait till everything's in the green, and you can go up to 2,400 RPM.
Okay.
And then once you get to 2,400 RPM, if you can just give me a thumbs up, I'll be actually reading the prop RPM on the DynaVibe, which is another little added benefit of this. You can check your prop tack if you want to. And then when I take the reading, I'm going to use this averaging function. And this is something I want to show you guys too. So this is the classic unit. And right now it says there's no tack. And we got our photo tack plugged in, our accelerometer plugged in, and we got 2 buttons here. We got an on and off button, turns it on, shows you what firmware version we got. And then this is the averaging button, and this is just a spring-loaded button. So I would highly suggest you use the averaging feature when you're balancing a prop. What this does is once we get up to our desired RPM, and we hit the average button, it's going to filter out any noise we're picking up that we don't want to be part of the reading. And at 2,400 RPM, it should take you about 7 seconds to average. And then the reading, which is live on the DynaVibe, meaning it's continually monitoring, is going to lock on here, and it's going to say, that's your reading, and that's the reading we can go make adjustments with. Getting ready to crank the airplane up, both sensors attached. We're getting the no tack signal. That's because the prop's not turning. Once the aircraft is cranked, immediately we're going to start reading attack. So really all we need to do at this point is wait till the aircraft starts up, everything's in the green, we can go to 2,400 RPM. Is that where you're going to try to get to?
2450, yeah.
2450. But the key thing to doing this is, let's say we don't get to 2450 and you went to 2300 as an example. On every subsequent run, you want to be at the same RPM every time, or as close to it.
Okay.
So it's up to you. And once you get everything going and you get cranked up to where you can start going up to cruise power, once you get to cruise power, if you could give me a thumbs up.
Got it, thumbs up.
And then once I'm done taking the reading, I'm going to do this. That means you can pull the power back, and then when you can, shut the airplane down.
Okay, got it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, we'll start it up. Clear prop.
Drop RPM, IPS, angle. As we're transitioning through RPMs, these numbers are going to bounce around. You got to let it stabilize for the numbers to stabilize. So it's really good to keep an eye on the RPM to make sure it's nice and steady. Even as it's going up to cruise RPM, we want to make sure that we're not losing the RPM. Okay, so our target was 2450. We got to 2372 on the prop RPM, and that just may be because if there's an analog tack in the airplane, there's a good chance it's not completely accurate. And so we're at 2372. Our IPS, how bad the vibration is 0.63 IPS, so that's definitely correctable. And our angle for where it is at 155. So what we need to do is determine what is the engine horsepower of the airplane we're doing. In this case, it's 145. We're going to divide that by 10, which will give us 14.5, and then we're going to add 30 to that. So 44.5 is what we're going to use for balancing the whole process on this airplane, okay? And what we want to do is multiply our IPS by that value, and this will tell us how much weight to add in grams. So what we want to do is document our reading. So we're at 2,372. We're at 0.63 IPS, and our location was 155. So if we took 44.5 times 0.63 IPS, that's telling us in grams how much weight we need to add to the propeller. Okay? But what we want to always do, particularly on our first run, is go a little bit lower than this number.
Lighter,
So I always tell people you are much better off going lower, making it an improvement, and having to walk everything in as opposed to doing radical changes, weight changes where we're going.
Now we're jumping back and
all
forth
over the place. So another real quick thing I was wanting to show people that this chart was designed for. Think of this as standing in front of the airplane looking back at it. We were at 0.55, or excuse me, we're at 0.63 at 155. So these graduated lines right here are the IPS. So we're right here, and we're at 155. And again, we're counting counterclockwise. So we are right down about here at 0.5 IPS.
This is
155.
Yep.
So we're about right here at 0.5. Should have my glasses on.
0.63 IPS.
0.63.
So this big line.
Yeah. So we're at 0.63. We're right about here.
Okay.
That's where the prop is heavy, and again, it helps to visualize it. So
We're
what
trying
we're
to
going
move to the center.
we
of
want to
that
move
bullseye.
this number to the center of the chart.
Right.
And if we added weight, and we added too much weight, it could potentially go way up over here.
Right.
And then we'd have to remove weight and walk it back. If we add a smaller amount of weight, we should be able to walk it in a couple runs. So we need to get 28 grams. And what I'm going to do, because practice what I preach, I'm going to go a little bit lower.
So the next size down would be.
Yep, so these are these AN 970-3s at 4.5.
Okay.
And it's probable we might need a longer spinner screw. So now what we have to do is go out on the airplane and figure out the opposite of this angle, where that's at, and see if we can actually physically add weight there. So going back, and this is critical, so I'll repeat it, even though we're offset from the center line, it's pointed straight up.
Yep.
So 0 degrees is 0 degrees where we would normally think it is. So the prop's rotating counterclockwise, so we're going to have to count in the direction of rotation 0, 90, 180, 270, and 0. And I will add that depending on the airplane you do, right now with this airplane, we only have a limited number of spinner screws we can use, so we may not be able to put the weight exactly where it needs it. But particularly on the first run, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. You want to be as accurate as you can possibly be, but if you can't be, then you got to do what you got to do, okay?
Right.
And so if you're ever going to go and do your own thing, the first time to do that is on the very first run,
Right.
okay? After that, you want to try to be as accurate as possible. So 0, 90, 180, 155 is right around here. This is the heavy side, and what we're going to do is go 180 out. And right now, this is our closest hole we can use, this spinner screw.
Great.
And just to reiterate, we're putting temporary weight on the spinner screw. We're not going to leave it there, okay? You cannot leave the weight on the spinner screw. At some point when we get the prop balanced, we're going to have to move, in this case, the weight into the backing plate. So again, this is our temporary weight location just for our testing purposes.
Yep.
And I don't know if you got this before, but just use common sense when you're doing this. If people are standing watching you do it and you're running the airplane, don't be standing over here by the side of it. I've never had anything come off, but if something did, you want to make sure that it's not going to hit anybody.
So is that your personal truck or a work truck? That's the question.
It's a rental.
It's a rental, okay.
With that in mind, we're going to rinse and repeat, and we're just going to do the whole thing over again. All right, so one run, this time we're just slightly high on the RPM. Again, no showstopper. We were at 2378 on the RPM. We were at 0.62, and our angle was 255. In one run, we went from 0.6 something to 0.06, and our goal is 0.07. So you could do two things at this point. You could go, hey, I'm really ambitious and feeling lucky, but there's science to this. Or you could say that would be acceptable. Some would argue that, hey, going below this point, you're not going to be able to really feel a difference. But we went from 0.62 to 0.06 in one run. Almost everybody out there would go, we just balanced the prop, you're done. Now we got the prop balanced, but we can't leave this weight here. And so this is pretty common that we're going to have to take this weight and move it into the backing plate. And we're going to have to drill a hole, and then we're going to have to add whatever associated hardware we need to permanently mount it there. So one thing we need to take in consideration is if we have 18.5 grams here and we need to move it in 1 inch, we're going to have to compensate for moving that inboard by adding more weight. So the way to figure that out, it's kind of a weight and balance problem, is to just, once you're at this point where you want to move the weight permanently in the back plate, determine the radius of this spinner screw, and you can just figure out the diameter of the spinner and divide it by 2, and then the radius of the spinner screw multiplied by how much weight you have on here. So we have 18.5 grams on here. This is, I'm making this number up, but let's say this ended up being a 10-inch radius. We would just simply do the math. Whatever that value came out to, we would divide it by the radius of what's going in there. So it'd be 180.5 divided by 8, or whatever you came up with, and that would be the total amount of weight you would need to add by moving it into the backing plate.
So we drill.
Pretty common prop balance, and I'm glad you could feel the difference.
Yeah, thank you so much for your help, and we're looking forward to flying a smoother, more pleasant aircraft.
And this took us an hour and a half?
This is an hour 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's not a big task by any means.
All right, folks. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for letting us borrow your airplane.
You bet.
And one run, an hour and a half from start to finish doing a prop balance, right? I think we spent more time looking for weights on ours than we actually did in a prop balance.
That's not uncommon.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why you need to get a weight kit.
The weight kit, yeah.
It's worth it.
Absolutely. Just in time saved. But yeah, one run, 0.6 to 0.06. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again soon.